warm gas. And if there is a CO2, definitely temperature gradually rises. CO2 is carried out in our body, it is carried out by an important red color pigmented molecule, haemoglobin. Haemoglobin carries the CO2 as a carbamino hemoglobin. What was that called? Carbamino hemoglobin. Carbon dioxide will be taken by the hemoglobin and converted into carbamino hemoglobin. About 20 to 25% of the CO2 is carried out as carbon or carbamino hemoglobin. This binding is related to the partial pressure of the CO2. What is that? Partial pressure of the CO2. So, how this PCO2 and carbamino hemoglobin affected? The carbamino hemoglobin is affected by PO2, partial pressure of oxygen, which is a major factor. Okay. If there is a PCO2 in high quantity and PO2 will be very low in the tissues, isn't it? In the reverse position, if there is a PCO2 in the tissues, in the reverse position, if there is a high PO2 in the tissues, PCO2 quantity will be very less. Okay. When the PCO2 is low, PO2 is high in the alveoli also. Dissociation, breakdown, what is that? Dissociation or breakdown of CO2 from the carbamino hemoglobin takes place. Okay. CO2 whatever bind to hemoglobin, okay, from the tissues it is delivered at the alveoli. It is delivered at the alveoli by breakdown or dissociation from the hemoglobin. RBC contain, if you take the red blood cell, it contains a very high concentration of the enzyme. What is that enzyme called? The enzyme namely carbonic anhydrase. What is that? Carbonic anhydrase, which is present in the RBC, okay, and minute quantity of the same is present in the plasma also. Minute or very little amount of the carbonic anhydrase is present in the plasma also. What is the use of this carbonic anhydrase? This enzyme facilitates some reactions in both the directions. We have a equation for that. Imagine here in this diagram, CO2 is combined with the H2O, okay, and gives you H2CO3 and it will be breakdown into HCO3 minus H plus ions. It will occur in the reverse position also. It will occur in the reverse position also. Okay, a reversible reaction. So this reversible reaction occurs in the presence of carbonic anhydrase. It occurs in the presence of carbonic. It occurs in the presence of carbonic anhydrase. It occurs in the presence of carbonic anhydrase. Here also carbonic anhydrase. And apart from that, at the tissues where partial pressure of PCO2, carbon dioxide partial pressure, if it is high due to various metabolic activities or metabolism. Metabolism is nothing but constructive reactions, catabolic reactions and anabolic reactions in the tissues, right? CO2 concentration will be very high. Thus CO2 diffuses into blood. Thus CO2 diffuses into the blood. In the blood, RBC as well as plasma into the plasma and forms HCO3 minus and H plus ions. At the alveolar site where PCO2 concentration is very low, at that time the reaction proceeds in the opposite direction. So, if the reaction occurs in the opposite direction, what will happen? The resultant products will be CO2 plus H2O occurs. CO2 and H2O occurs. So here finally CO2 is trapped as a bicarbonates. CO2 is trapped as a or transported as a bicarbonates at the tissue level and transported to the alveoli as a bicarbonates and released out as CO2. Okay. So every 100 ml of blood, what type of blood? Here, if the CO2 is present in the blood, then it is called deoxygenated blood. Every 100 ml of deoxygenated blood delivers approximately 4 ml of CO2. How many? 4 ml of CO2 to the alveoli. Now, how respiration and their movements are regulated in our body? Respiratory movements are under the control of some certain kind of centers that are located in the brain. What are the various centers? Okay. So especially the brain contains special neural system. This controls some specialized movements of the respiration. Now what are those centers that are located in the brain? Specialized centers are present in the medulla oblongata, which is a part of hindbrain, okay, of the brain, called a respiratory rhythm center or respiratory rhythm center. Primarily it is responsible for regulation of respiration. Another center is also present apart from this. Another center is located in the pons viruli region of the brain, which is called as mnemotaxic center. What is that? Mnemotaxic center, which can moderate the functions of the respiratory rhythm center. Okay. So whatever the neural signals, from these centers, if they reduce, the duration of inspiration, thereby alter the respiration rate occurs. Okay. So neural signals are responsible for regulation of the respiratory movements like inspiration, thereby respiration rate, etc. Understood everyone? And after this, apart from these two centers, chemosensitive area. What is that? Chemosensitive area is situated to the rhythm center, which is highly sensitive to CO2 and hydrogen ions. Now, increasing in these substances can activate this center, which in turn signal the rhythm center to make necessary adjustment, These adjustments are necessary to process the respiration, by which some of the substances can be eliminated. Now, receptors are also present associated with the heart. The heart contains aortic arch. What is that? Aortic arch. Even carotid arteries. What are they? Carotid arteries. Also recognize these changes of CO2, H plus ion concentration. So, by recognizing these concentrations, they send the necessary signals to the rhythm centers. For remedial actions. The role of oxygen in the regulation of respiratory rhythm center is quite insignificant. It is quite insignificant, not significant. And apart from this, disorders of respiration, what are they? Asthma is a difficulty in breathing, wheezing, causing wheezing due to inflammation of the bronchi, and the bronchioles. Now, apart from this, emphysema, there is one more disorder called emphysema. Is a chronic disorder. What do you mean by chronic disorder? What is the difference between acute and chronic disorder? Acute disease stays within us for certain time of period, but chronic diseases stays within our body for longer time of period, in which alveolar walls are damaged. Okay, so because the respiratory surface will be decreased in the emphysema. One of the major cause of this disease or disorder is cigarette smoking. Smoking is the most what we can call major cause for this disorder, emphysema. Occupational respiratory disorders. Some of the people working in various places where there is a lot of dust, where there is a lot of smoke in the atmosphere, in certain climatic conditions, especially in the industries, especially grinding and stone breaking industries, they produce so much of dust. Okay, this dust, if they inhale during normal inspiration, it enters into the lungs and causes various disorders. These kind of disorders are called occupational respiratory disorders. Okay, so long exposure of this dust into our lungs causes inflammation, leading to fibrosis in the lungs. Okay, lungs become small fibrous bubbles like fibrous tissues, and thus causing serious lung damage. Workers in such industries should wear protective masks. Suggested to wear the mask, those who are working in those